Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the CK Sim Show. Today, I'm so excited to sit down with Wendy Correa, author of My Pretty Baby. It is a must read, and please pick the book up. We're going to talk to her in just a moment. But before we do, I want to ask you to subscribe to the channel and leave us a comment, and any support matters. Thank you so much. We'll be right back.
A little show of happy, a little show of shine. Come and hear some stories, maybe leave inspired. Give your mind a break, maybe heal your soul. Come and spend a while at the CK Sim Show.
Wendy Correa, how are you?
I am great. It's so lovely to be with you today.
Well, it's lovely to be with you as well. And I'll tell everybody that I am a doofus, apparently, and had you booked for an hour and a half earlier than I thought you were, but here we are. We made it. So thank you so much for sticking around and having this conversation with me. I appreciate it.
Yes, because I was very excited to meet with you. So I was determined that I was going to
Well,
have you.
I love that determination. And I said 5:30 but I was like, listen, y'all, I'm like, I have a meeting. It's a conflict. I gotta go. And we're trying to wrap it up. I'm like, listen, you can figure this out. I'm gonna go now and hop on that call and see if they're still there. So it worked out. Everything worked out. So we get to have this wonderful conversation. So you
Yes,
aren't you're a lot of things actually. But you're an author of a memoir
I am.
called My Pretty Baby.
My pretty baby. You can see, well, it's kind of behind me. This thing is gigantic. Let's say.
I love it.
But
I love
here's
it.
my actual book, My Pretty Baby, with the beautiful cover of me when I was about 3.
And just
My
such a darling little dress as well. A
Yes.
darling little dress. I love that. And the cutest shoes. The
I
cutest
know,
shoes.
right? I got myself some adult saddle shoes like that.
I love this. I love
When I
this so
saw
much.
that picture of me, I was like, oh, I have to have some of those.
Perfect. And you should actually have a replica of the dress. Maybe like because you could still do the whole like empire sort of waistline with poof out. You could totally do this. I would see that being really lovely. All right. So tell me, who is Wendy Correa? Who was Wendy when she was a young child in this picture? Tell me about that one, that version of you.
Well, that version of me was the age of innocence, I would say, because I was only 3. And from what I could tell, the world was a fabulous, beautiful place. And I had a mom and a dad and 2 older siblings. And I had a beautiful backyard with fruit trees and strawberries in the garden and honeysuckle covering the braided archway, and an incredible view into St. Louis from where I lived, high up on a hill in Collinsville, Illinois. And that's the little girl whose innocence was then shattered at age 7. So I hold that little girl very tenderly to say, I'm sorry, honey, because you don't know what's coming.
But I just note, and I'll do this and I apologize. So I just note how you say your story.
My story? Or to
You no,
her?
yeah, you say to her, like you said, I'm sorry, my little darling, because you don't know what's coming, right?
Yes.
So it's almost like you're apologizing to her because you did something.
Oh, yeah. Not because I did something, but because of her innocence and that it would all be shattered so quickly. That childhood innocence, that lovely period of time that's supposed to be just magical. I mean, I'm sorry for my inner child, for that part of myself. I have a lot of tenderness and compassion. So, I mean, it is for myself as well. But,
I,
um,
I love that, right? It makes me think of therapy too. When you're in a journey and you're trying to heal, it's when you want to work on your internal dialogue, it's to envision how you would speak to a 3-year-old child with that kindness and empathy and compassion, all of those things to hold a safe space for them. So what happened at 7 years old?
so when I was 7, my father died, and that was the end of the innocence in life and knowing that people can die, at
Mhm.
such a young age. Now I know how damaging the loss of a parent is at such a young age. And they do say, I mean, of course, it's never a good time to lose your parent, but they do say that particularly under the age of 12, it is quite a traumatic and damaging experience. But, back then in 1964, when my father died, people didn't understand that children are people too, and children need uh, they need to be treated as a human, as a full human, that they can understand things. My family sort of, I felt, in retrospect, I feel I was just, the family dog. Like, we don't need to explain anything to her because she wouldn't understand. But no one took the time to say, you know, we're so sorry, your daddy died. Um, he was very ill, and the doctors did everything that they could, but his body just gave out. And, you can always talk to him and the moon and the stars. And he's very sorry that he won't get to see you grow up, and he would want you to be happy even though he's dead. I mean, whatever you want to say to a 7-year-old child, none of that was said or explained to me. And so it was also a period where I for the first time, felt very separate from other people because I felt very alone in my grief and in my confusion and in the mystery of life. And that's when I really felt separate from and alone. So that was the beginning um, of the loss of my father, and not being held to process my grief. There was no trying to make sense of it or explain death to a child. That was the beginning. And then a few years later, that trauma that I experienced was further impacted when my mother met and brought home the man who would become my stepfather, and he was an alcoholic and mentally ill and violent. So that was then further trauma to a child of then, already not feeling safe in the world and then not feeling safe in my home. So that was another compounded trauma.
I mean, 1964, you would have been in the thick of the be seen and not heard
Mhm.
mentality when it comes to children, right? I mean, like that stuck around, I feel like, until about the 80s. It started to wane
Mhm.
out a bit in the 90s, and we're now in a whole different world altogether. But
Yes.
like to me, I have questions that are popping up in this. If you were grieving, were you crying? Did you express that you were missing your dad? Like, what was your mother's or your older siblings' responses to that? Was it just dismissed?
It was sort of dismissed. It was just sort of silence. And I just sort of watched how the adults, and I outlined this is the first chapter of my book, and that from a 7-year old's perspective of just trying to glean some understanding from watching the adults. I mean, my brother was 7 years older and my sister 12 years older. So I was really the only child. My brother was a teenager. And, it was sort of like just the business of taking care of his death. And even in the way that my mother told me was sort of just like a slap in the face. It was just very matter of fact, your father died. And then getting into the car with my brother and my sister and my mom, and nobody said anything except that my mom and my sister just started, rattling off the facts. You need to call, you know, these people, and we need to call the funeral parlor. And it was all just the facts of sort of like preparing. And then I watched my brother go into the backyard. It was January, so the ground was covered in snow. And he went out to throw a football by himself, like straight up in the air and catch it. And he did that over and over again. I remember looking out the window and I could feel his sadness, but it wasn't expressed to me. And I must add, this was just a month after the assassination of JFK. And so for me, the only guides that I had was watching TV and knowing that our whole nation was grieving and watching JFK's family, and particularly Caroline Kennedy, who was about my age. And for the longest time, I thought Caroline Kennedy and I were in a little club of fatherless girls, and that for a long time, I thought Caroline and I were the only members of that club.
Now that you have come to work through that sort of trauma, do you look back and see sort of the actions of your mom, your sister, and your brother differently through a softer lens or through a more understanding lens? Not, I want to be very clear here. I'm not at all condoning their lack of sitting with you and ensuring that you understood and held space for you to express that grief and all of those things. I'm wondering if at some point did it shift for you where you were like they were grieving in their own way maybe, or
Yes, and I detailed that as well, like in the at the funeral, you know, watching their faces and their reactions, and again, 1964, and but unfortunately, that's not the whole story, and that's what my whole book sort of my mission when I first started writing my book was my question was, what happened to my family? And my writing it was unraveling the Gordian knot of trying to understand, because I knew there was something else. There was always something else. Like I needed to dig a little bit more. I say my pretty baby is an autopsy of my family. And it truly is, because I started to peel apart the layers of dysfunction and family secrets and how people acted in the family. And so, um, and then of course the alcoholism and the domestic violence. And um, so, yes, as I was sitting down to write this, to use writing as a tool of catharsis, a tool of healing, a tool of trying to make sense. As Joan Didion said, if I understood myself and if I understood the world, I wouldn't need to write. And so I was wanting to understand, and I had started this book years ago in trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together. There was always something that didn't quite fit, that didn't quite add up. And, and then in while I was writing it, of course, I thought at first, I am writing this for myself. I am writing this for my own healing. I'm not even thinking about publishing it until my editor finally said to me, "You are going to publish this, right?" And then I was like, "Am I?" But I also realized as I was writing it, this is not just my memoir. This is everybody's story. This is my call to action for us to have these kinds of conversations about unearthing the stories of family dysfunction, the family secrets, the adverse childhood experiences, the mental illness, the drugs and addictions in our family. I feel all you have to do is look around our country and see there is some tremendous healing that needs to be done. And I believe that being honest with ourselves and where we've come from and what kinds of homes we were raised in is the very good start for us to have these conversations without shame, without blame, just for healing. And so, you know, I realized this is my call to action, but it's also a guidebook for others who may be wanting to do healing and they're not sure where to start. So I spent 4 decades healing my family story. And as I'm writing the book, already one of the biggest secrets was unveiled. And it won't be a spoiler alert here, spoiler alert, I don't want to give it away because it's quite a shocking revelation for me to learn at 62 years old, where I finally was able to go, well, that makes sense. And so, with that information, as my long winded way of coming back to answering your question, yes, I have come to a place of deep compassion for the members of my family that they're all wounded and they were all trying to do the best that they could. And some did better than others,
Mhm.
and some did not. So I can have compassion for them and I send them loving kindness because I've spent years studying Buddhism and it's really helped and healed me. And I can send my family loving kindness and forgiveness, even though, their best was at times not really good at all.
And I think that that's such a important thing to always remember, right? Like, so yeah, you can hold space for that version of you, like that younger self of you, feeling that you didn't get what you needed, right? Like the bread and water that you needed at that time to process, to grieve, all of those things. But then also that the other parties that should have been providing this to you were going through their own sort of journey. So I think that there can be enough space to hold both of those at the same time
Uh-huh.
and recognize, okay, this is life. We see it. Like you just said, you can look around at your country, or you said our country. Well, I'm a Canadian, but I can
Both
see
of our countries.
yeah, both of our countries, the whole world,
No.
right? The whole world. We can look around and realize that there is healing that needs to take place. So, your mom and your two siblings, are they still with us?
Um, my mother has passed, my stepfather has passed, and the two siblings that I knew are still with us.
Okay, so they're still with you, but you're not in contact with them, is what I
I'm
gleaned from
not
you.
in contact with my older sister. I am in contact with my older brother minimally. We
Yeah.
email here and there, but yeah, it's quite dysfunctional, and um, I had to protect myself from a lot of abuse from my older sister. And I understand now, as I said, once I learned the big, huge secret, I understand the trauma that she also endured, but I was just a child in this family. I was the youngest. My mother was 38 when I was born. As I said, I was born, my brother was 7, my sister was 12. And so I barely lived in the same house with them. And
Hmm.
since our father died, then I was pretty much like an only child with my mom and my stepdad, because by then my brother and sister had moved out. So I didn't know them really well. Um, m- and my sister was always very verbally abusive to me. And now I have some clarity as to where her anger came from. But, I even offered to her that perhaps her anger was um, misappropriated to me and not to maybe the adults in the family. But um, no, that she, she, what is wonderful is that we're now learning that blood is not necessarily thicker than water, and
Hmm.
family does not necessarily always come first. And just because you're related to someone by DNA does not mean that they are a healthy relationship for you to be in. And that sometimes the best way that you can take care of yourself is to be estranged from members of your family. And in Buddhism, we would say, or in psychotherapy, we would say healthy boundaries. You know, um, Even the poet Frost said, good fences make good neighbors, or something like that. Like, having healthy boundaries is sometimes the most um, healing thing that you can do for yourself. And there's some other, I don't know, wonderful person said, I can forgive them, but that doesn't mean I want to have lunch with them.
Hmm.
So that's pretty much my philosophy, is I can forgive you and I can send you loving kindness and I hope you have a good life, but that doesn't mean I want to have a relationship or go to lunch with you. And that's kind of how it is.
Well, and I think that that's also just a very hot topic at this time in our lives right now. A lot of people are discussing about going no contact with
Mhm.
family, moms and dads, like reverse parents going no contact with kids, things like that. And I'm lucky in the sense that I have a great relationship with my parents, but if not because they're my and that's that I mean, you'll understand this actually. I think some people will understand when I say this. I don't love my parents because they're my mom and dad. I love my parents because they are the people that they are.
Exactly.
And at 17, 16, 17, 18, if they were to be hit by a bus, I would have had zero reaction to that because during that period of time, I absolutely despised and hated.
Because
I am a gay son of a preacher man. My mom and dad are both Pentecostal ministers, so we grew up in very small towns. There were so many things, and my parents weren't. My parents did the best that they could. I see that now, right? But one of the things that bothered me growing up was I believe that my parents didn't love me the way I needed to be loved.
because
Right.
because they knew you were gay and rejected you.
Right. Not to like where it was abusive or they wouldn't give me dinner or anything like that. But because of their faith, they
Mhm.
rejected the concept of me being gay and
Yes.
ensured that I knew that it was a sin and an abomination and depravity of God and things like that. There was love in my house. Now I can say that because I've
Uh-huh.
done like you, I've done the work. I went back and I looked. And but there was a period of time, like, when I finally came out, I was disowned. Not for a long period of time, 4 months. My dad's a bit of a sap. But the relationship that has ensued over the last, say, 27 years is because we were equally invested in putting in the work.
That's
And
remarkable, especially that, I mean, that they're Pentecostal. I have friends, they're both Methodist ministers, and their son is gay, and there was never an issue. And my mother-in-law was well, in South America, Catholicism is different, but she was, Catholic and very strongly Catholic. And two of her kids were gay, and now two of her grandkids are gay. But it was never like an issue. Like, I love you. It doesn't matter. But for Pentecostal, oof.
Completely different, right? It's a very big, and they're still ministry. Like they're
Mm,
still in the ministry. But I mean, I always I do a little shake and say, I'm responsible for opening up my parents' eyes a little bit to the world, if you will, because they came from rural Newfoundland. They were
sure.
all pastors of very tiny communities. So like echo chambers are very big in these spaces. We can see this in the US right now and in parts of Canada, these echo chambers. But it's interesting because I would tell you that my parents are truly just incredible people. My father
Oh,
is like one of my favorite people in the world
oh, that's so
because,
sweet.
but
But
the thing is,
did they come around and say we were wrong and you're an amazing human being and that's all
oh,
that
so
matters?
well, what's so interesting is that what's real, and this is about not me, but what's so interesting is that we've come to the understanding that their faith disallows them from like computing that homosexuality is okay under the Lord. But we've also come to the understanding that, my dad and my mom, they pray for guidance or reconciliation of some sort, like because they they tell me that they're proud of me all the time. They're very happy with the human being that I've become. They're all of those things, but there's just that one little thing. And so it was a decision that, okay, this is who I am, and that's who
Yeah,
you are. But I think just because we don't agree on this one piece of sort of information
right.
doesn't mean that we don't have the opportunity to have a
Love.
relationship,
But
right?
they
And
didn't try to get you to go to conversion therapy or anything like that?
oh no, my parents would never do that.
Mm,
Like they would never do that actually.
good. Oh, good.
Um, and they had lots of opportunities to do that. Like we went to therapy when I was younger, but they because I came out 3 times before I finally came out at 18 and like stayed out at that point. So they knew since I was in grade like 3 that I was gay. So yeah. Oh yeah, I knew at a young age. But like I look back now and there was lots of love in that house. It's just I needed to be loved in a specific way, but
Sure.
that's it is what it is. But I want to go back
Well,
to you now.
congratulations. I'm happy to hear that because other people don't have that opportunity, and it's very sad to me that
It is
anyone would.
it is so sad that, and I think that this is what speaks to my parents' character. Oh my gosh, we're talking about me still. Um, it speaks to my parents' character. I have this thing that I say, and I'm sure it pisses people off, and the people it pisses off, I'm not sure if I care if it pisses off, but there's such thing in this world as true Christian,
I
and
believe
then
that.
the Christians who like to just weaponize Christ, right?
Right.
And my parents, to me, represent true Christianity, that they will love as Jesus loved. And so for them, it's just a matter of, you're our son, we love you. We don't have to agree with everything you do. But you'll always have a place in our home. You can call us anytime, day or night, like that sort of thing. So I think it's just how they perceive the world. And yes, when they were younger, I had, oh my God, I got to switch gears. But what I was driving around the um, the country with my best friend many, many years ago, and I would just recently turned 30, and I'm 45 now this summer. And we're just driving along, we're listening to country music, we're having the time of our lives, and just, for some reason, out of blue, it hits me that at 30 years old, my father had 3 children, a wife, and an entire congregation to take care of. And in that moment, I was just absolutely dumbfounded and like gobsmacked and like I couldn't imagine having that level of responsibility right now at 30. Like I'm just chilling in the countryside, listening to country music. Like, can you
Right?
imagine?
Yes.
So I think there's a lot of things that make sense. Like you said earlier, when you look back, things make sense to you. Things make sense to you when you start to do the work on
Right.
yourself, and then when you start to peel back the onions. If you can hear a
Yes.
noise, I have a puppy and she's
Hi,
digging.
puppy.
Yeah, she's digging down there.
Oh.
So
Well,
I
I need to send you my book because I want you to read it because you'll enjoy one of my chapters, which is called Accidental Baptist.
well, if
And it's sort of my
right behind me is the books from all the authors that have sent me. So if you send me a copy of your book, I'm going to read it. I will review it, and it will live up here in plain sight for
oh,
the rest of the
good.
year.
Yay. Good.
So I would love to do that. I'm especially interested also in the shocking sort of thing that you found out, because like my wheels started turning right when you said that, and I'm like, well, what could that be? And then you know, there's the inside that I'm like, oh, I want to ask her, but we'll wait till after the show's over. But I'd rather read the book. I love books. So we're gonna pin it back to you. So you are, and I want to say a massive congratulations to this, 39 years sober in this
Yes.
past March, and 34 years off of nicotine this past
Yes.
November. If that's
Yes.
math, then so 34 years, so 39 years sober. So how long were you drinking? Like when did that start for you?
Well, the first time I got drunk was when I was 11 years old.
Okay,
And so my stepfather was an alcoholic, as I said, and he would become violent. And I was, I wondered, like, why does he drink when he, gets like that and gets violent? So I was curious. And at a sleepover with girlfriends in my house, we got into his stash and we all got drunk and, passed out. And I learned that drinking makes you numb. And it was the
wow,
first time that I kind of felt relaxed and I felt numb. And that energy of constantly being on edge, on alert, waiting for the next shoe to drop, the fight or flight hormones that lived in my body because I didn't know when he would become angry and violent again. And so, and then as a teenager in growing up in Illinois, it was, pot, it was LSD, it was alcohol, it was cigarettes, um, as a teenager. But when I fled home, when I fled Illinois and left to go to California, I got myself into college. No one, without anyone's help, I got myself into college in California. And one of the first things that I did was go to a 3-day Zen Buddhist retreat. And I started to learn how to meditate, how to calm my central nervous system. Of course, I didn't even know what that was or what that meant. I just knew that my heart was always pounding. I couldn't sit still. My thoughts were always racing. I didn't feel safe in the world. And that was the beginning of my healing journey, which I outline in my book, The Decades. And how they say it takes a village. Well, I use the entire village, but the beginning was Zen Buddhism and nature. Actually, my friends in college were all from California. They had grown up backpacking and hiking, and they, showed me how to buy the right hiking shoes, and they took me into the wilderness. And so I started to build like um these modalities that helped me. And of course I was still drinking, and then in Northern California it was Humboldt homegrown, and so there was pot and psilocybin mushrooms. And it was sort of like, taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back because I was in college. And then I could, continued to drink. I moved to Los Angeles. I got into the music industry and then added cocaine to the mix. I was in LA working in the music industry for record companies. And so I was drinking, I was smoking pot, I was doing cocaine and staying up all night. And it was truly a miracle. I was arrested for drunk driving, and I call it a miracle because it probably saved my life or someone else's life. And I had court-ordered AA meetings that I had to attend. They took away my license. I could only drive to and from work, to the grocery store, and to AA meetings for a year. And so I had a court-ordered AA meeting, and that's when I went to find in West LA. Since I worked in the music industry, I had found a list of AA meetings. Of course, this is way pre-internet, but I had found like a printed out list of AA meetings that were for people in the music industry, for musicians or people that worked in the music industry. So I found one in West LA, and I was probably pacing out front and smoking cigarettes and scared to death to go in. I had no idea. And I walked in, and this gentleman came walking up to me, extending his hand to me and reaching out to shake my hand. And he said, "Hello, my name is Richard." And I was shocked and my mouth dropped. And in my head, that was exploding. It was like, well, your name might be Richard, but it's also Ringo. And Ringo Starr and his lovely wife, Barbara Bach, greeted me at my very first AA meeting. And so I sat there through the whole AA meeting. I don't even know if I listened to a word that they said because I was so focused on the fact that Ringo Starr was at an AA meeting. And if he could get sober, then so could I. If he could take time out of his day to show up at an AA meeting, then so could I. So that was how I really, and then of course there were a few slips, after a year of sobriety. And I was at an award ceremony, and there's, 10 bottles of wine on the table, and I had a slip, and, there were a few slips, but I finally got completely sober. And so being arrested for drunk driving was a miracle and saved my life.
That's such a massive story, right? Like, there's so many like things that you could sit and unpack with that story. But I mean, um, I guess yes, like that that pivoted your life
Hmm.
away from alcohol. Do you still attend AA meetings? Like, it's been 39 years. So
39 years. Occasionally, I will. Actually, I've been feeling like it's time to go to an AA meeting just because I want to be around other people who are sober and who are working a program. But like I said, I found Buddhism, meditation, hiking, yoga, psychotherapy, and Native American spirituality. So at the same time, I I really, even though I rejected organized religion when I was 8 years old and walked out of church and said, this isn't for me, I'm still a very spiritual person. And I knew that there was some way that I could be spiritual. I could be connected to my higher power without having to attend a formal church. And I had minored in Native American studies in college. I have a degree in psychology, a degree in theater, and then minored in Native American studies. And I had found this group in Los Angeles, of all places, that of white people who had been studying for years with Native American elders. And they had a sweat lodge in their backyard. And I was invited to this, and it blew my mind. And it was exactly what I needed at the time. And so I spent many years attending numerous and different kinds of Native American spiritual ceremonies, and that in combination with AA, in combination with psychotherapy, in combination with yoga, and writing and all of the things that I was using, I used them all. And sometimes I would spend more time in a sweat lodge. When 5 years after I got sober, when I knew it was time to give up cigarettes, I diligently started attending Nicotine Anonymous. And, you know, quitting pot was easy. I didn't like how it made me feel. Quitting cocaine was easy. I didn't like how that made me feel. Quitting alcohol was not as easy, but a little bit easier. I could still go to clubs and see bands and drink a club soda with lime in it. It's like I could still drink, but just wasn't alcohol. But nicotine, whoa. I was, how they say, I can quit smoking. I've done it a million times. I had quit a million times and I could not seem to shake it. And ironically enough, I found a Seventh-day Adventist church that had a stop smoking program. And the minister of the church, his name was Rocky. And it was not proselytizing. It was not trying to convert people to be Seventh-day Adventists. He just wanted to help people quit smoking. And they had this program that was completely free. And I said to Rocky, okay, Rocky, you are my higher power because I really don't know how to kick nicotine. And he would send us, we would go to this program and he, showed us films and showed us what smoking does to your body, but also what it does to your brain and how it hijacks your brain and really how addiction works. And then he explained how to break addictions by doing something else. So he would send us home every night with a gallon of water that we were to drink within the next 24 hours and a little brown bag with like hard candies and gum and toothpicks. And then a list of things, before you smoke, take a shower, go for a walk, call a friend. And that program, for some reason, it was one day at a time, just like the 12-step programs. And I would say to Rocky, okay, and we would all gather in a circle at night and hold hands and we say, I choose not to smoke. And then I would say to him, okay, I'm not going to smoke for 24 hours until I come back here tomorrow night. It was a 7-day program. And I said, but I don't know, Rocky, after that, I might smoke. Like I always left the door open that, okay, I might smoke. But, and then this program actually it was at the church, at the Seventh-day Adventist church, where they had Nicotine Anonymous AA meetings. And I started attending those but for the grace of God, go I, that, I haven't smoked in 34 years.
34 years. Now, I have a question for you. I mean, I think what's so interesting too is because people also fail to see that an addiction is an addiction, right? Like in a broad spectrum of things.
Mhm.
And like if you're an alcoholic, you're addicted to using the alcohol, the numbness, like all of that sort of thing. If you're smoking a cigarette, you're addicted to that, crack, cocaine, whatever it may be. So it's been 34 years, and I can understand for some reason in my brain the pull of having a drink. But do you still have the occasional moment where you're like, I wish I could have a cigarette? Does that exist still? Do you think about it still?
I don't really think about it. I enjoy being able to breathe and I enjoy sobriety. And I enjoy my head being clear. But occasionally when there's a lot of stress, I might say, when I'm 83, I'm having a shot of Jack Daniels and an Export A cigarette, which is Canadian. Those were my cigarettes,
They are
Canadian
Canadian, yes.
cigarettes. Hmm. And I say that and I laugh, but you know, not until I'm 83.
Yeah, it's so what's interesting is I am a smoker. I've smoked since I was 12 years old.
Mhm.
Um, I've quit before. I have for like months and months and things like that. It was always the hard thing. The problem I have is so there's two sides to this coin. So the problem I have is I really love smoking. I
Yeah,
just love it.
I
It's a
know.
friend. Do you know what I mean? It's a friend for me. It's a break in the stressful day. But also, what I am realizing now, though, as I am approaching 45 this summer, I am, and this is a new term for me, so I'm going to use it today for the first time, a fiber artist. So
Oh,
I crochet. I find great peace and joy in crocheting. And as I'm aging, you know, I've noticed like some cognitive slips, things like that. Getting arthritis in my hands really badly. And I think to myself, I find myself thinking, I'm like, you know what? I'm like, this smoking business. I'm like, you're going outside, you're smoking, you're feeling dry, you have to overcompensate with your hydration. Like, this is not helping you, Mr. Sims, like in your aging process. And like, if you want to like reduce inflammation and all of this stuff and maybe like slow that arthritic uptick, you might want to just kind of butt out. Like, for good. And so I
yeah.
find myself moving towards just it's run its course. It's been a great friend. I've really loved having that friendship. But it's like now I'm like, okay, you know, I'm not so sure anymore. So I just find myself now just naturally, usually when I eat, I'll always go have a smoke. Like that's just like those weird little addiction things. I just find
Mhm.
myself now catching myself. I'm like, you know what? I don't actually want that at the
Right.
moment. So I'm just gonna go do this. And so I've noticed
Maybe
that
you could crochet instead.
well, and I think that that's crochet, and that's the thing, right? So it's really devastating to me to have arthritis start really creeping up so bad because the crochet is so good for my mind. Like it just
Mhm.
centers me, feels makes me feel grounded. So I it could be. So I do feel that within the next little while I will be a non-smoker. Like it's like a chapter of my life. I do feel this
Well,
naturally. So and it will.
yay.
I know it'll be tough for the first like 2 weeks, you know, with the neurons, and you just have to replace the neurons. Like, so I know that I can do it. But what I will have to remember is like when I get past my 6 months or my 9 months or whatever it takes, right before that day, that moment inevitably comes. I just have to remind myself. I'm like,
Right.
go have a glass of water, 10
Yep.
if I
Go
need
for a
to.
walk.
Go for a walk, take a shower, crochet a blanket just from scratch,
Crochet.
like yeah,
Yep.
like all of those things.
You
So
find
you
things to replace it. And eventually that it took me a good 3 months of crying every single day, but, you know,
it's
that was
well
me.
because it is, yeah, but yeah, addiction is addiction, and people need to understand that. So you, I want to talk about the My Pretty Baby. So the book got published. You said that that was like a big deal for you.
A
But
huge
also,
deal.
besides it getting published, it was a book club pick for ABC Channel 7, Tattered Covered Book
Cover.
Club, and Colorado Public Radio.
Yes.
Like,
A
so it's not like,
best book of 2025 by Colorado Public Radio. And here in Denver, our local meteorologist on ABC on Channel 7 is Lisa Hidalgo, and she has a book club. And she chose my book for her very first book of 2026. And that was amazing to go to the bookstore, and there were 50 people there who had all read my book, and they were so gracious and so thoughtful, and they had such wonderful questions. And I really wish, besides podcasts, I love doing podcasts, but besides podcasts, I wish I could just travel around and go to bookstores and be an author, guest of their book club. But of course, most book clubs people are reading, New York Times bestsellers or whatever, and they don't have the author there. But I would like to put out to the people listening, if you have a book club, I would zoom in. So I am zooming in to a book club in Illinois, and I'm doing about 3 local here in the Denver area so far, but I would love to find more book clubs who want to read my book and discuss it. And if wherever you are, I'll either show up or I'll show up on Zoom, because that to me is so lovely when you're with people who have read your book, they're interested, and they have thoughtful, interesting questions. So, yeah.
Well, I feel like that's just something that the world can make happen, right? Because there's lots of book clubs, there's book club tours that you can do.
Mhm.
So I want this for you as well because I think you
Thank
find
you.
joy in that.
Yes.
And so it's doing well. So like you had said, those are New York Times bestsellers, but like you may become a New York Times bestseller. Like just
Well,
because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it's not on the bingo card. So,
well, your lips to God's ears.
well, there you go, right? And the story sounds like you put a lot of work into it,
Years
and
of
people are
work. Yes.
picking it up. So that's what I want. I will flip you my address. You can send me a copy, and I will also read it, and it'll live right up here.
That's so exciting to
It's
me.
going to
That's
replace one of those
fabulous.
books right there because they've been there for about a
Yay.
year now. So,
Okay.
but yeah, so this is wonderful. So you've written this book. You are doing great things. You want to do some tours and show up for book club shows. But do
I'm
you have other things like carved out for your next chapter?
Well, yes, I'll be going to the Tucson Festival of Books next month, and I am on a panel, which
Ooh.
is amazing. And I will be going to the Brooklyn Festival of Books in September and Printers Row in Chicago in September. And I hope to be going to treatment centers to talk about recovery. I would love to go to talk to teenagers in homeless shelters or kids that are um, at risk,
Oh,
because I was a kid at risk. And while I was writing my book, I want the listeners to know that I also simultaneously was reading all of the latest books on adverse childhood experiences and what we now know about how adverse childhood experiences can affect the brain
yeah.
and can follow us throughout our entire lives, and how they increase our risk for mental illness, addictions, depression, and chronic diseases. But the good news is because our brains are so viable, we can heal ourselves. And so, my positive message to people is you can heal from your childhood experiences. And that's basically what my book is, like a guidebook. It just follows, me along on all these things that I did and I've done and I continue to do, because this will be my whole lifetime journey. I mean, I have done a lot of healing. I have a wonderful relationship with my husband. I have an incredible son. I've created a beautiful life. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. And I want people to know that they can do it, and not that someone may necessarily want to participate in Native American spirituality, for instance, but if they do have a religion or some other means of connecting with their higher power, or through sobriety, or if it's one of the things that I also wanted to mention is we know that psychotherapy is very critical to a
Oh,
healing process, but also, as Bessel van der Kolk points out in The Body Keeps Score, it's it isn't just psychotherapy that we need. We actually, like, the issues are in the tissues. The body keeps the score. We need some kind of movement therapy, whether it's hiking or walking or yoga, massage, and actually meditation is like movement for the brain. And so I want people to know that even though trauma is universal, so is healing. And that's my hope, is that in me telling my story, that's one other person will feel less alone in their story. and that they'll read my book as a way to be like a guidebook for them for their own healing journey.
I love this. I love this so much. So everyone at home, you got to get out there, online, bookstores, pick up a copy of My Pretty Baby by Wendy Correa. And
Yes,
then
and
also,
I wanted
go
to
ahead.
say I did also record and narrate my own audiobook. So of course, my book is available wherever books are sold. You can ask your library for it. Go to your indie bookstores, but it's also on Bookshop and Simon and Schuster and Barnes and Noble and Amazon, of course. And the audiobook is on Audible, and there's also the ebook. And people can also reach out to me at www.wendybcorrea.com.
Which we're going to link in the description. So go check out the site, pick up a copy of the book. When you get a when you finish reading it, make sure you go leave a review. Those reviews go a very
Very
long way
important. Please leave
for
a
our authors.
review.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much for being a guest. I really thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I'm glad that we were able to make it work. And for everyone at home, until next time, get out there and live your wildest dreams.